Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a missionary or an explorer or even a name worth recording. You're a rubber worker in the Congo Free State, which mostly means you're starving, afraid, and wondering how many more trees your hands can bleed for. You don't own much beyond a basket, a knife, and the scars of last week's quota. The jungle is not your refuge, it is your factory floor. And somewhere far away, a Belgian man grows rich on your silence. Before the chicotte snaps again, before the rubber sap eats into your wounds, do me a favour. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing who's tuning in from around the world. If you'd like early access to more slow descents into history's quieter horrors, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You wake with the sun. Not because you want to, but because the forest doesn't wait. The air is already thick by the time you stand. The kind of heat that settles behind your eyes and makes your shirt cling to your ribs before you've even moved. Your village is quiet at first, just bird song, someone grinding meal, the low voices of early risers. You used to rise like this for planting, for fishing, for mornings that belong to you. That's not what this morning is. There are men near the riverbank, strangers. Their skin is darker than the Europeans, but lighter than yours, and their uniforms are tattered but still official. Some carry rifles, one has a whip. They don't ask permission to enter the village. They don't need to. You've seen them before, passing through other places. Sometimes they leave with food, sometimes with people. They say little. They carry weapons and paper, and the man at the front reads names like they mean something. You hear your name. Not the one your mother gave you, the other one. The clipped name they wrote on a list when you were baptised last year, just before they burned the old charms hanging in your house. You didn't pick that name. It was given like an order. They tell you the king has requested your help. They say it's a duty, a task, something small. They never say the word rubber. They call it work, a new responsibility, a tax. You ask how long you'll be gone, and they don't answer. You ask if your family can come. They don't answer that either. They point to your feet and tell you to move. The path into the forest is one you know well. You used to walk it for firewood, for hunting, for the comfort of being away from people when the day grew too crowded. Now it feels different. The air doesn't smell like possibility. It smells like sweat and iron. Your guides don't talk. They march. You fall in line. Your world narrows to the sound of feet on damp soil and the shriek of insects hiding in the brush. You arrive at a post, a clearing hacked out of the trees, with a few wooden huts, a weighing scale, and two white men sitting behind a desk, as if this patch of earth were theirs. One has a cane, the other a pistol. You don't speak their language, but it hardly matters, they speak in gestures. One points to a coil of vine oozing sap, and then to the trees. Another waves you away and nods to the overseer. It's clear enough. You collect this. You bring it back. You do it fast. They give you a bucket, a small knife, and a quota that makes no sense to you. You ask how much that is. They show you a basket. You ask how long you have. They point to the sky, then they point to the whip. You understand that part perfectly. The vines are high. Not all of them bleed easily. Some cling to the tallest trees, their sap protected by thick bark and swarming ants. You cut, you wait, you scrape. The sap sticks to your hands. Like molasses, hardens against your skin and burns if left too long. You collect what you can. It's never enough. You hear a scream nearby, not close, not far. Someone has dropped their basket, or broken their knife, or maybe just collapsed from the heat. No one moves, no one helps. You keep working. The forest does not forgive delay. The men with rifles are always watching from somewhere, just behind the trees. When you return to the post at dusk, your arms are streaked with blood and sap, and your legs shake. The man at the scale doesn't look at your face. He looks at the basket, weighs it, then sighs. Not enough. He doesn't yell, he doesn't beat you. He simply nods to the soldier behind you, who takes out a notebook and writes something down. Your name, your number, your failure. You've started a debt, and there is no way to erase it. That night, you sleep on the ground. There is no bed, no mat, just a spot between two roots where the earth hasn't yet been turned to mud. You hear a monkey call from deep in the trees. You used to think that sound was beautiful. Now it's a reminder that you are somewhere that does not want you, somewhere that used to be yours, but now belongs to a man you've never seen who lives across the sea. Tomorrow you will rise before dawn. You will try again, and the forest will wait with the same blank, humid breath. You are no longer a farmer, no longer a hunter, no longer a man with a family or a past. You are a rubber collector. That is what you are now. That is all. And there is no way out. The quotas must always be met. You learn that the number doesn't change, even when it rains, even when your knife dulls, even when your hands blister and crack and begin to swell. The quota is the only thing that matters. The vines don't grow low. You have to climb, sometimes 20 feet, sometimes more, scraping your arms on bark slick with moss, praying the branch holds. You cut the vine gently. If you cut too deep, the sap won't flow. If you cut too shallow, it won't flow fast enough. You smear your skin with it anyway, because it's the easiest way to carry it down. It dries on your arms, black and gummy. You scrape it off with a knife and pray you've gathered enough. It never feels like enough. The trees don't always give. Some days you climb 20 and only get sap from 3. Some trees are tired. You understand the feeling. The vines pull at you, snag your ankles, slice your legs. You fall once. You don't tell anyone. You limp through the rest of the day and hope no one notices. Injuries are not reasons here. They are weaknesses, excuses. The quota still stands. The forest offers no shortcuts. As you think at first that maybe if you move faster, climb higher, you'll reach it. But speed means mistakes. Mistakes mean drops. And rubber is counted to the ounce. If you spill what you've collected, you're starting from nothing. If you hand in too little, someone else pays. That's what they tell you. And you believe them because you've seen it. You've seen a man beaten until he couldn't walk because he missed his quota twice. You've seen a woman taken from her home and locked in the post storeroom because her husband ran. You've seen a child held at gunpoint until their father returned with enough sap to make the scale tip just slightly past the line. And you've seen what happens when he didn't. They don't always punish you directly. That's the trick. Sometimes they go around you. If you fail, they take your wife, your son, your sister, the ones who don't even touch the trees. The message is simple. Your labour is not your own. It belongs to everyone you love. And if you fall behind, you will drag them all with you. There's a man at the post who writes down the weights. He doesn't smile. He doesn't shout. He simply reads the scale and marks the notebook. If you succeed, he says nothing. If you fail, he raises one eyebrow and sets the book aside. That's when the soldiers step in. Force Publique, they call themselves. Sometimes barefoot, sometimes drunk. Always armed, always eager. You begin to do the math in your sleep. How many vines per hour? How much sap per tree? How long it takes to boil it down? You forget how to think in full sentences. You think in fractions. You dream in weights. Your rest is no longer measured in hours, but in how many baskets behind you are. The forest starts to feel like a clock that you're always losing to. There's no real conversation anymore. The other workers don't speak much, not even in whispers. No one wants to be overheard complaining. That's seen as defiance. Defiance leads to punishment. Punishment leads to an empty cot the next morning. And even if someone were listening, what would you say? That you're tired? That you miss your old life? That you can't feel your fingers anymore? Everyone knows. Everyone feels it. That's not special. That's normal. Once you try to ask the overseer if the quota could be lower. Just for one day. You phrase it carefully, respectfully. He laughs, not cruelly, just dismissively, like you've asked him to turn the river backward. He says the vines are full of rubber. You just have to work harder, that's all. Then he turns away, already forgetting your face. You wonder where he gets his numbers from. Who decided that a man could carry this much, climb this fast, bleed this slowly? Maybe it was written down in Belgium, in an office with glass windows and polished floors. Maybe it was a guess. Maybe it was a dare. Whatever it was, it became a law. Not one you can argue with, but one that speaks through rifle barrels and twisted rope. So you keep climbing, you keep scraping, you keep handing over blackened handfuls of your time and hoping they'll weigh just barely enough to let your family survive another day. The quota isn't a number. It's a blade, pressed gently to your throat, and each day you pray your balance is good enough not to make it slip. They are always watching. You don't always see them, but you know when they're near. A snapped twig, the quiet click of a rifle bolt, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. You never relax anymore, not even when your basket is full, especially not then. That's when they come to inspect. They are called the Force Publique. But no one says the name aloud, not unless they have to. They wear mismatched uniforms, faded blue jackets, old boots, pieces of Belgian tunics passed down like relics. Some don't wear shoes at all, but they all carry weapons, and they all carry the same look in their eyes. Not rage, not cruelty, just the hollow focus of men trained to kill without asking why. Most of them look like you. Some come from other parts of the Congo. Others were taken as children, raised in barracks, taught in a language they barely understand. They salute like Europeans, march in lines, and take orders from pale men with monocles and pocket watches. You used to think they might show mercy, that they might hesitate, but they don't. The training is thorough. The reward for loyalty is survival. Each soldier is given a rifle and a belt of bullets. Each bullet is recorded, and each one must be accounted for, with a body. One bullet, one corpse, no exceptions. If a bullet is missing, they must bring proof that it was used. That proof is often a severed hand. You remember the first time you saw one. It wasn't a soldier carrying it, but a boy, 12 maybe, carrying a small bundle wrapped in leaves. Inside, a hand, brown, curled, still warm. He didn't cry. He didn't look at anyone. He simply laid it on the ground near the scale and sat down. He'd brought it in place of his father, who had fled into the bush, or died. It didn't matter. The hand balanced the books. Sometimes the hands are taken from the dead. Sometimes they're taken from the living. There's no consistency, no fairness. That's the point. The uncertainty is its own form of control. You begin to fear mistakes you haven't even made yet. A basket dropped, a vine cut wrong, a glance held too long. Anything could be seen as resistance. The shikot is their favourite, a long whip made from dried hippopotamus hide, shaved thin and knotted at the tip. It splits skin with the first stroke. By 20 lashes, the flesh is flayed. By 100, the man is gone. Sometimes dead, sometimes just gone inside. You've seen it used for lateness, for poor posture, for speaking when not spoken to. You've seen it used simply because someone needed to be reminded. The white officers don't dirty their hands often. They stand back and watch, their boots polished, their canes tapping against the ground like metronomes. They write reports, they issue orders, they sip gin. Some believe they are civilizing you, some believe you are animals. The end result is the same. You try not to meet their eyes, but sometimes you do. And when you do, you see nothing in them. Not anger, not hatred, just paperwork. You are not a person in their gaze. You are a percentage, a weight, a threat to efficiency. They don't care about your name. They care about your output. There are days when the post runs short on bullets. That's when the executions stop for a time. Not because they've grown kinder, but because they are waiting for a shipment. You hear them argue about logistics, boats delayed, funds misallocated. The killing is procedural, administrative, rubber in, hands off, reports filed. You've learned not to ask questions, but you still think them. How do they sleep? Do they feel anything when the knife goes in? Do they dream of hands? You hope they do. You hope the forest whispers to them like it does to you. But deep down, you know better. They sleep well. They eat well. And when they return to Belgium, they will be thanked for their service. There's a myth they tell themselves, that without them, this land would be chaos, that you are being taught order, that your suffering is noble because it leads to progress. But you know what they're really guarding? Not civilization, not peace, just profit. They stand between the rubber and the riverboat. That is their purpose. That is all. So you learn to move without being noticed, to meet your quota and keep your head down. You never run. You never speak out. You never give them a reason. And even then, it might not be enough. Because sometimes it's not about what you've done. It's about making an example, a lesson for the others. You no longer count your days. You count the soldiers. You count the bullets. And when someone disappears, you count the hands. There was a time when food was not a question. Not always plentiful, not always easy, but possible. You planted cassava. You trapped fish. You knew which trees bore fruit and which streams stayed clear after the rain. You knew what hunger was, of course, everyone did. But it came in seasons, in rhythms, and it passed. It did not stay like this, constant, gnawing, heavy as iron in the gut. Now you don't plant, there's no time. The fields near the village lie overgrown, weeds choking what was once maize. The tools rust where they were dropped. The days are claimed by rubber. Every hour spent working the earth is an hour not spent meeting quota, and you can't afford that kind of indulgence. Your stomach may forgive you. The men with guns will not. Fishing is forbidden. Not officially, not in writing. No one gives you laws, only punishments. But the guards patrol the riverbanks now. And even if they didn't, there's no bait, no nets. You traded those away long ago for a scrap of dried meat or a few kernels of maize. The rivers are silent. The fish might still be there, but they are not for you. At first you tried to ration what little remained. You pounded dried roots into a paste, boiled leaves into bitter broth, crushed termites for protein. Then the famine worsened and rationing became guessing. Guessing how many bites your child could live on. Guessing how far your wife could walk before fainting. Guessing whether you should eat the last yam or save it for the person least likely to cry about it. Children cry without sound now. The tears dried up weeks ago. Their stomachs swell while their limbs shrink. A cruel contradiction you never understood before. Now you see it every day. Bellies bloated with air and nothing else. They lie limp in the shade, too weak to scratch the flies from their own eyes. You want to help, but you're not much better off. You sit near them, chew a bit of bark, and pretend the bitterness is something else. You try not to look at your wife when she eats. You pretend not to notice how slowly she chews, how she pushes her portion aside when she thinks you're not watching. You both pretend she isn't shrinking. Her cheeks have hollowed. Her fingers tremble when she lifts the pot. She works when she shouldn't, collects kindling, hauls water, picks leaves by the roadside. Because even now, even like this, she doesn't want to be useless. But you know, you both know, some nights you dream of cassava, not a meal, just the act of peeling it, cutting it, steaming it over the coals. You see your hands moving as they used to. Quick, practiced. In the dream, your stomach is full. You wake with your fingers curled into fists and a taste in your mouth that isn't real. You reach for your wife and find only warm earth. She's already up, boiling weeds again. The bark is the worst. You chew it because it gives your teeth something to do, and it dulls the edge of the pain for a little while. Some bark numbs your tongue, some makes your throat burn. You don't ask which is which. You chew what's handed to you. When you defecate, it comes out like rope. Twisted, dry, painful. Your stomach cramps in waves. Sometimes you vomit water just from bending down too fast. People start disappearing. Not because they run, but because they can't stand. They collapse during collection. They fall behind during marches. Some simply lie down in the trees and do not get up again. The guards don't waste bullets on them. They kick them once, maybe twice, and if there's no response, they move on. You do the same. You can't carry them. You can't even carry your own guilt. The worst part is how ordinary it becomes. You stop asking who's sick. You stop asking who ate last. When someone doesn't show up, you say nothing. There's no ceremony, no mourning, just another face gone. Another stomach no longer waiting in line. Hunger becomes the rhythm, the rule, the thing you measure the day against. You used to think of food as a pleasure, a comfort, something to share. Now it's currency, now it's silence, now it's shame. You'd trade anything for a bowl of thick porridge, a roasted yam, even a fistful of raw grain. But you have nothing to trade, just more sap, more time, more blood. And still the quota comes. Still the overseer asks why you're moving slower. Still the soldiers raise their rifles when you stagger. You try to explain once that you haven't eaten in 2 days, that you're dizzy, that your knees won't hold. The guard nods. Then he tells you to run. So you do. You run because death by rubber is not quick. It is slow. It starts in the gut, works its way through the bones, and ends in the eyes. You've seen it. You've felt it. And you know, there's no starving with dignity here, only starving quietly enough to avoid attention. The jungle does not want you here. That much becomes clear after the first week. Its silence is not peace. It is resistance. The trees don't care about your quota. The vines don't care about your orders. They twist and tangle in defiance, cutting your ankles, tearing at your arms. You duck and crawl and slash your way forward like an intruder, because that is what you are now, a trespasser in your own land. Your tools are crude, a dull knife for scraping, a basket made of brittle reeds, rope that frays. Nothing sharp stays sharp. Nothing strong stays whole. Your knife slips more often now. Your grip is weaker. Your palm splits open along an old blister, and the sap finds the wound before you can wipe it. It burns, not the way fire burns, but deep, as if something is pulling at your nerves from inside the skin. You bite your tongue to stay quiet. Pain makes the soldiers suspicious. You sweat constantly, even when you aren't moving, even when you're sitting in the shade, trying to catch your breath. The sweat pools behind your knees and drips from your chin. It never cools you. It just carries salt out of your body and into your eyes, leaving you dizzy and blind. Your clothes never dry. They rot as you wear them. Holes open in the seams. The cloth peels like old bark. You think of removing your shirt, but the underbrush would shred your skin in an hour. The insects are worse. They live in the trees, in the dirt, in the folds of your clothes. They find your sores. They lay eggs in the cracks of your feet. You scratch until you bleed. Then the bleeding becomes infected. You tie cloth around the wounds, but the cloth is filthy. So is the water. Everything is filthy. Infection spreads like heat. Subtle at first, then unbearable. Your legs swell. Your skin darkens at the edges. Still, you walk. Still, you climb. The rubber does not wait for the fever to pass. Trench foot sets in before you know the word for it. Your boots, if you have them, are soaked through from the first hour of each day. Your socks disintegrated long ago. The jungle floor is always wet. The rivers flood without warning. Your feet blister, then rot. The skin peels back in sheets. You walk on exposed flesh, nerves screaming, toes blackening. You try to pretend it's something else, that it's temporary. But the stench says otherwise. Your hands are worse. You use them for everything. Cutting, scraping, climbing, carrying. The sap cakes beneath your fingernails, hardens across your knuckles. You can't scrub it off. It forms a second skin, one that cracks when you move. Your blisters don't heal. New ones form beneath the old. Your fingers swell and stiffen. Some mornings, they won't close at all. You pry them into motion, with your other hand, wincing with each tug. No one offers help. No one has hands to spare. You are not paid. There is no coin, no ration, no compensation. Your labour is a debt you did not agree to. A tax, they call it. Your reward is not being punished. Your prize is waking up and still being allowed to exist. Gratitude is not expected. Neither is exhaustion. They look at you like a machine with a crack in its frame, something to be patched, not pitied. If you break, they will find another. If no one is left, they will bring more from another village. There is a man near your post who used to be a carpenter. You remember him vaguely from before. Now he cannot hold a tool. His fingers are frozen into a permanent claw. He sits beneath the same tree each morning, watching the others leave for the forest. The guards ignore him. They've already counted him out. He doesn't speak much anymore. When he does, it's in fragments, about wood and hammers, and a house that no longer stands. Some days, you wonder if that will be you, if one morning your legs will refuse to stand, or your eyes will blur so badly you can't see the vines. And if that happens, if you simply sit down in the dirt and stay there, what they will do, will they beat you? Will they shoot you? Or will they simply forget you exist? You try not to ask those questions aloud. You've seen what happens to men who speak too freely, but the thoughts cling to you, heavier than the sap, more persistent than the flies. You work because you must, because the alternative is worse, because the jungle takes and takes and takes, and if you stop moving, it will swallow you whole. And so you carry on, one step, one tree, one painful scrape at a time, until your hands no longer close, until your feet no longer carry you, until the only thing left of you is the rubber you bled to collect, and the scars it wrote across your skin. You've never seen a bicycle, you've never sent a telegram, you've never held a telephone or turned on an electric light. But these things, you're told, are the future, and you're helping build it. That's what one of the white men said once, half laughing, half serious, standing beneath the company flag, as if it meant something. This rubber? It's progress. You're part of something big. Then he stepped over a sick man without looking down. You don't know where the rubber goes once it leaves the jungle. It's packed into crates, sealed with wax, and marked with symbols you can't read. Then it's taken by boat, down the river, past cities you've never been allowed to enter, past customs stations and checkpoints, into steamships bound for Europe. That's where it turns into tyres, into cables, into waterproof boots for soldiers, and wire insulation for telegraph lines. That's where it becomes something valuable. They say your work keeps the world connected, that without this rubber, no one could talk across oceans or travel without horses. They say this is modernity, civilization. But you don't feel civilized. You feel wet, hungry, and covered in the filth of another man's future. Your feet bleed into the same soil that grows the wealth of kings. You've never seen a king either, but his picture is on every pamphlet, and his name is on the rifles. Leopold, a name you didn't know until it was carved into the post's wooden gate. He's not your king. He's never set foot here, but everything you touch now belongs to him. Your trees, your labour, your time, your silence. The land you were born on is called Free State, but nothing in it is free. It is his, and by extension, so are you. You heard once that he called this a humanitarian project, that he spoke of lifting up the African people, that he made promises to Europe about roads, schools, and trade, that he wrote essays on Christian duty and signed treaties with names forged on behalf of chiefs who had never held a pen. All of it lies, but well-dressed lies told in rooms with chandeliers and soft chairs and believed by men who had never seen your forest. In Brussels, they say, there are statues of him. One shows him offering a book to a kneeling child. Another shows him pointing to a globe. You try to imagine the face of the man who profits from your pain, but you can't. All you can picture is his shadow, the weight of him pressing down through 1,000 intermediaries. He's not a person to you. He's a system, a hunger that stretches across the ocean and devours everything in its path. Some of the agents talk openly. They boast about their profits, the bonuses they'll earn, the gifts they'll bring back to their wives. One man once said that each village he disciplined paid for his piano. You didn't know what a piano was, still don't, but you saw the smile on his face when he said it, and you remember wondering how many fingers it took to play, how many hands he had taken to earn it. There are ledgers, you've heard, books kept in Europe, listing shipments, weights, names of shareholders. You are not in those books. Your labour is, your output is, but you are not. You are a quantity, not a man. Your exhaustion doesn't appear in quarterly reports. Your infections don't dent the profits. Your child's hunger is not itemised. You are the part of progress that gets scraped away before the product ships. They take pictures sometimes of the crates, of the steamboats, of the rubber piled high. These photos end up in pamphlets back in Europe under headlines like "The Triumph of Commerce" or "A Mission Completed." None of them show you. They show smiling officers, polished scales, and fields cleared of brush. Not the blood, not the rot, not the smell. Once a missionary told you that this was temporary, that the pain was necessary, that God was using your suffering to refine your soul. He said the rubber trade would bring schools, doctors, and churches. But there is no school, there is no doctor. The only building in your village with stone walls is the storehouse, where they weigh your harvest and count the lashes. You sometimes wonder what it's like across the sea. You imagine clean streets, full plates, chairs with backs. You try to picture what they do with the rubber. You wonder if they know what it cost, but you doubt they ask. It is easier to believe in civilized progress when the work is done in the dark, by hands no one sees, on land no one maps properly. You are told you are part of something great, but you don't feel part of anything. You feel erased, bent into usefulness, then discarded. The future is being built on your back, and it is not being built for you. They speak, but you don't understand the words. You catch fragments now and then. Shipment, conversion, discipline. But the full sentences slip past like smoke. Their mouths move with confidence, issuing orders, sermons, numbers, corrections. None of it is for you. They don't try to meet you in your language. They don't ask what you were called before the post assigned you a name. They speak as though you are not there. And when they do look at you, it's through a lens of ownership. The white men who run the post talk of trade and schedules. They argue about weights, quotas, and missing barrels. Their eyes are always on the scale, never on the people carrying the baskets. When they speak to you, they use only the necessary words, commands mostly, or threats. They don't say please, and they certainly don't say thank you. Sometimes they say good, but never about you, only about the rubber. The rubber can be good, you cannot. The missionaries speak differently, but not more kindly. They carry books and crosses, and speak of heaven with the same certainty that the soldiers speak of punishment. They say you must be washed of sin. They say your people were lost and now you're found. But you were not lost, you were living. They arrived and decided otherwise. They speak of light and salvation, but they carry their God like a spear, not a balm. They do not listen. They do not ask. Your stories don't interest them. Your customs are inconvenient. Your beliefs are dangerous. They nod when you speak, but only because they're waiting for their turn to correct you. One of them once asked if you'd heard of Jesus, and when you told him you'd heard of many gods, he shook his head and told you not to say that again. He wasn't angry, just disappointed, like a man trying to train a mule. No one asks about your village. No one asks about the songs you used to sing, or the medicine your mother made from tree bark and clay. They call it superstition. They burn the charms. They forbid the drumming. They say the old ways are primitive, but the new ways come with pain and hunger and a silence that feels like dying in slow motion. Over time, you stop offering explanations. You stop trying to translate. They do not want your words. They want your obedience, so you learn their gestures. A bowed head means submission. Eyes lowered means respect. Silence means survival. You fold yourself smaller each day, trying to leave less of a mark, trying not to draw attention. You become a shadow, still moving, still breathing, but just barely. You notice that some of the other workers have stopped using their real names. They answer only to the ones given to them, names from the Bible, or from ledgers, or from whatever the officer could pronounce. At first you resisted, kept your name alive like an ember in your chest, but it wears you down. Every time someone calls you something that isn't yours, it chips a little piece away. Eventually, you stop correcting them. There's a man at the post who was once a village elder. You didn't know him well before, but you remember his voice, loud, confident, heavy with the kind of authority that came from knowing plants, ancestors, seasons. Now he doesn't speak unless spoken to. He moves carefully, hands always visible, eyes on the ground. You once heard a white officer call him boy. He didn't flinch. That frightened you more than anything. The worst part is how quickly it becomes normal. You start to expect the shouting, the commands, the sermons. You start to judge yourself by their standards. When you meet quota, you feel relief, even pride. When you fall short, you feel shame. You begin to think in their language, even if you can't speak it. You start to measure your worth in rubber, in weight, in whether or not the guard raises his hand. You no longer sit upright unless you're told to. You don't eat unless you're allowed. You ask before speaking. You bow before entering a room. These aren't rules anyone taught you. You learned them by watching, by surviving. You learned the way you learn to duck before a blow. Once, painfully. This world does not belong to you. It is full of uniforms and rituals you don't understand, rules you were never given, and expectations that shift like mist. The white men speak as if this land has always been theirs, as if they discovered it, named it, improved it, but they did not plant the trees, they did not build the paths, they do not bleed when the vines cut too deep. You do. You are not a man to them. You are a body, a carrier, a number in a long column of numbers. Your purpose is simple. Obey, produce, vanish. You learn how to disappear when seen. You learn how to fold yourself into usefulness. You learn that dignity is something you must hide if you wish to keep it. And so you live among strangers, strangers with books and guns and polished boots, strangers who smile when you kneel, strangers who will never know your name, only your weight. You are told that you are saved, not because you asked to be, but because someone decided you needed it. A missionary arrived at your village long ago with a book in one hand and a cross in the other. He did not come with food. He did not come with medicine. He came with words, words that condemned your ancestors, your customs, your gods, words that promised heaven if only you'd give up everything that made you who you were. They gave you a Christian name. They said your old name was pagan, too hard to pronounce, too tribal. You didn't argue. You bowed your head and accepted it like the rest. It's shorter, easier, the kind of name that fits on a list. But it feels hollow in your mouth. It tastes like someone else's breath. Your fetishes, small carvings, charms, bundles of cloth and bone, were taken from your home and thrown into the fire. The priest watched them burn. He said it was a cleansing. He said the smoke would carry away the darkness. You watched the fire rise and realized too late that they had taken more than wood and fabric. They had taken your protection, the things your mother gave you when you were a child, the things you whispered to when the forest grew too quiet. They forbid the songs, not just the loud ones, not just the dances. They forbid the hums, the lullabies, the low chants that made the day feel bearable. They said the drum was the devil's rhythm. They said your language carried spirits. They said silence was purity. Now the only songs allowed are in French or Latin or some broken hymn translated into stilted syllables that barely land on the ear. You go to church because you are required. It is not a place of rest. It is a place of order. You sit on the ground in rows while the priest speaks of peace, of sacrifice, of a loving God, who sees all and forgives. He says suffering is holy, that the pain you feel is a gift, that your labour is sanctified through obedience. And beside him, nailed to the post outside the door, is the rotting head of a man who missed quota last week. There are crosses everywhere now, hung above doors, carved into tree trunks, painted on the walls of the post. They stand beside gallows and bullet-pocked fences. The same hands that beat you carry rosaries. The same mouths that scream commands whisper prayers before meals. You once asked yourself how they could hold both violence and scripture in the same breath. Now you've stopped asking. You've learned the answer. They believe the two belong together. The God they bring is not your God. He does not dance. He does not answer. He does not laugh in the fire or speak through the wind. He does not reside in rivers or trees. He lives in books. He lives in silence. He lives in the eyes of men who call themselves righteous as they oversee amputations. When you ask why this God allows such cruelty, they say it is a test or a punishment, or simply not your place to question. You watch as children are baptized with water too dirty to drink. They cry not because they understand, but because the ceremony is loud and strange and cold. Their parents smile weakly, eager to be seen as cooperative, as faithful. Some believe, most pretend. Faith, here, is insurance. There is one priest who seems kind. He gives out biscuits during services and smiles often, but even he looks away when the punishments begin. He says he cannot interfere in matters of discipline. He says his concern is the soul. Your body is not his jurisdiction. And so he preaches mercy beside the gallows, and his hands stay clean. You once saw a man pray before his execution. He knelt beneath the cross, hands clasped, eyes closed. The priest blessed him. The soldier shot him in the back of the head before the prayer was finished. The blood stained the altar stone. No one cleaned it. The stain is still there, a shadow beneath the holy words, etched in foreign script. Sometimes you wonder if their God sees you, if he sees the hunger, the bruises, the children buried in unmarked graves, if he saw your mother when she died in silence, her charms already ash. You wonder if he watches from above, or from the side, or from the eyes of the men who call you beast and brother in the same sentence. You decide, eventually, that it doesn't matter. Whether he watches or not, he does not stop it. You go to the services. You kneel when they tell you to. You mutter the prayers you've been taught, but inside you are quiet, not out of reverence, out of absence. Faith, like hunger, becomes a hollow that fills with silence. There was a time you believed there were limits, that even these men, cold-eyed, rifle-carrying, quota-counting men, would draw a line somewhere, that children would be spared, that families would be left intact, that punishment, if it came, would be pointed, exact, reserved for those who had done something wrong. That belief did not last long. Your son was taken as a warning, not because he failed, but because you did. Your basket was too light that day. You said it was the rain, the vines, your hand too swollen to climb properly. The overseer didn't listen. He nodded to the soldier beside him, who pointed to your boy, 8 years old, barefoot, half asleep beside a pot of boiled greens. They took him without raising their voice. They didn't need to. You knew not to fight. You asked where they were taking him. They said nowhere, just to the post, for safekeeping, until your next delivery. And you understood then what they meant. He wasn't a prisoner, he was collateral, a body held in place of rubber. You were no longer working for yourself. You were working to buy your child back. That night, your wife didn't speak. She stirred the pot of leaves with a stick and did not look up when you approached. Your daughter sat beside her, eyes wide and glassy, like someone who had seen too much too quickly and hadn't yet understood how to process it. She has not spoken since, not even when the guards pass, not even when your son's name is mentioned. Her silence is complete, like a door that has closed from the inside. You met your next quota, you met the one after that too, but they didn't give him back right away. They said there was paperwork, delay, miscommunication. You offered to carry double, to work nights, to trade places with him. They laughed, then they walked away. You waited 4 more days. He returned thinner, quieter, face too still for a child. He wouldn't tell you what happened. You didn't ask. The idea of rebellion fades. It is not that the thought never comes. It does sometimes late at night, when you imagine grabbing a rifle, setting fire to the post, fleeing into the bush, but then you remember what happens when someone tries. You remember the village, 2 days' walk from yours, the one that stopped sending rubber. When the soldiers came, no one was left behind. The huts were ash, the trees blackened. The soil still smells of smoke when the wind is right. Your brother's wife didn't run. She didn't steal. She didn't speak out. She just asked a question. She asked why her food rations were cut in half when her husband met his quota. The officer didn't reply. He pointed to the square. She was dragged there by 2 soldiers. Her wrists were tied. The chicotte came out. You watched from a distance, unable to move. It took 30 strokes before she screamed, 40 before she fainted. They stopped at 50. She hasn't stood upright since. There is no logic to the punishment, no schedule, no warning. They strike when it suits them. Sometimes for disobedience, sometimes for delay, sometimes for nothing at all, just to remind you that they can. The violence is not the tool, it is the message. Submission is survival. Defiance is fire. And fire spreads. You learn to monitor yourself constantly. The way you speak, the way you stand. You practice keeping your face still, your voice low, your eyes down. You tell your family to do the same. You teach your daughter how to carry herself small, how to become background, how to disappear. She listens because children learn quickly what silence cannot teach. The worst moments are when others break, when someone refuses to move, when someone screams, when someone tries to run. You do not cheer them on. You do not help. You hold your breath and hope it will be over quickly. You hate yourself for it, but you've seen what happens to those who intervene. You've seen what happens to their families. There is courage and there is survival. Here, they are rarely the same. You once believed that suffering could earn mercy, that if you bent low enough, worked hard enough, proved your loyalty enough, they would eventually stop hurting the people you love. But you were wrong. The punishment is not about justice. It is about control. Pain is the leash, and the leash must stay tight. Otherwise, they lose the illusion. Now you know the rule. If you obey, you live another day. If you don't, someone else dies. You are not an individual. You are a node in a network of threats and consequences. Your mistakes are not yours alone. They ripple outward. They land on backs that are not yours. That is the price. So you endure, you bow, you carry. You count your steps and weigh your words. You no longer expect fairness. You no longer expect safety. You expect only this: that if you falter, they will find someone close to you and they will make an example. You see him one morning, standing just beyond the post, pale skin, dark suit, clean boots. He does not carry a rifle. He doesn't shout or inspect your basket. Instead, he carries something else. A box, square, shiny, mounted on a tripod. He moves slowly, carefully, like the ground might bruise him. He is not from the company. He is something different. He asks questions, not the usual kind, no demands, no commands, just questions. He uses an interpreter to speak to the villagers. He listens, which is strange enough. Stranger still, he takes notes, writes them in a small leather-bound book, frowning as if he's trying to make the numbers fit. He listens to the old men. He listens to the women. And for a moment, it feels like the world is shifting, like someone finally wants to hear the truth. His name is Roger Casement. The priest says he's from Ireland, an envoy of some kind, a man sent by a foreign government to inspect the situation. The priest seems nervous around him, more polite than usual. The soldiers keep their distance. The overseer offers him wine. Casement refuses. He walks through the post slowly, not looking at the crates of rubber or the rifles stacked by the gate, but at the people, at you. With him comes another name, E. D. Morel. You don't see this one. You only hear the name whispered later, passed through campfires and hushed corners. A clerk in a shipping office, someone far away who saw the numbers and realised they didn't make sense. More rubber coming out of the Congo than could be explained by trade alone. Not enough imports to justify the human cost. Too many crates, not enough goods. The math betrayed the lie. Casement sees it in person. The graves, the stumps, the empty huts. He walks through villages still smouldering from the last punishment. He counts the crosses in the dirt, touches the burned walls, traces bullet holes with one trembling finger. You think, maybe, this man feels it. Maybe he's different. And then comes the camera. It is not the first time you've seen one. Missionaries have them. Some of the officers too. But this one is used differently. The tripod is placed carefully. The villagers are arranged in front of it. No one smiles. No one is asked to. A woman sits with her son, the stump of his wrist wrapped in cloth. A man stands beside a pile of severed hands. Children pose in silence beside the graves of their parents. It feels like a funeral and a performance at once. You are told to stand still, to hold your head a certain way, to look directly at the lens. You do. You don't blink. You want to believe that the lens sees more than your face, that it sees the rot, the hunger, the emptiness, that it will carry these things back across the ocean like smoke in a jar. But the camera doesn't speak. It doesn't weep. It clicks and clicks again, and then it is done. You are told to move. You step aside and someone else takes your place. A boy missing a foot. A woman missing an eye. A child with a scar that runs from his shoulder to his hip like a torn vine. The camera sees them all. Whether the world will is another matter. Casement keeps writing. He fills pages with numbers, estimates, names. He speaks quietly with the priest, more sternly with the overseer. He makes copies of his notes, as if he expects them to be taken. He whispers to those who will listen, "I will tell them." And for a moment, you believe him. Then, just as quietly as he came, he leaves. There is no explosion, no sudden change, no collapse of the system. The guards remain. The quotas remain. The chicotte remains. Casement boards a boat and disappears down the river. His box of notes sealed shut. His photographs stacked neatly in a leather case. You never see him again. But weeks later, the overseer begins watching his own back. The priest grows quieter. The guards become a little more careful, not less cruel, just slower, more cautious. You hear rumours that the photos made it to Europe, that the papers are printing them, that people are horrified, outraged, confused, that questions are being asked in London, that perhaps, change is coming. You don't hope, not really, not anymore, but you remember the way Casement looked at you. Not like a subject, not like a servant, not like a threat, just a man, tired, hurt, still standing. That isn't salvation, but it is something. Your overseer paces more than usual now. He checks the books twice, sometimes 3 times. His voice stays level, but his fingers twitch when he speaks. His reports are longer, his boots cleaner. He spends more time with the priest, speaking behind doors that don't quite close all the way. He's being watched. For the first time since you arrived at this post, he knows what it is to be observed. You recognise the tension. You live with it daily. Word spreads slowly, but it spreads. Someone says that the photographs were printed in a London newspaper, that a speech was given in Belgium, that a man stood before a crowded room and said the word atrocity, not quietly, not behind closed doors, but out loud, in public, as if it were truth and not gossip, as if it mattered. You don't know the names of the men who spoke. You've never seen the papers, but you know something has changed. The guards are still here, but they no longer strike without checking over their shoulder. The priest still preaches, but he flinches when the soldiers shout. The mood is not safer, just more careful, like everyone is holding their breath, waiting to see which way the wind will turn. Some say the king is nervous, that Leopold's face has appeared in cartoons, ugly, exaggerated, his beard soaked in ink and rubber, that writers accuse him of hypocrisy, of greed, of death by delegation. You've never seen his face, real or drawn. But the idea that people now see through his smile brings a strange comfort, a small bitter one. Still, the quotas remain. The system does not break just because someone names it. The weight on the scale doesn't lift because it's described in a foreign pamphlet. The chicotte still cracks, the rifles still fire, the punishments don't stop. They simply happen in more private corners now. Behind tents, behind buildings, behind the illusion of progress. The missionaries are tense. Some double down, defending the work, saying that critics don't understand the burden of civilizing a continent. Others grow quieter, more solemn. One of them cried during a sermon last week. No one asked why. No one needed to. His hands shook as he held the book. You wondered if he'd finally looked at you and seen more than a soul to save. You hear a rumour that Casement's report has names in it. Specific ones. Places too. You try to imagine your village on a map in a city you've never seen. You try to imagine your brother's face printed in a newspaper, your sister's arms photographed beside a caption. The thought makes your stomach twist. It feels wrong, but also seen. The white men here start writing more letters, more paperwork. They argue less in front of the workers. They correct each other's posture. They start saying things like protection and due process when inspectors come by. None of it means anything, not yet. It's not for your benefit. It's theatre, but theatre needs an audience. And now, at last, there is one. Still, you bleed. Still, you starve. Still, you dig the graves with the same hands that collect the rubber. Awareness is not relief. It is not food. It is not safety. It is only the possibility that someone, somewhere, has noticed you exist and has chosen to care. You do not know if that will be enough. Some of the younger workers begin to whisper about freedom, not loudly, not recklessly, but the word returns, tentative, like a bird testing the air after a storm. They say Belgium might take control from the king, that officials might intervene, that maybe one day the quotas will stop. You listen, but you do not speak. You've seen too many promises rot before they ripen, too many maybes drowned in the river. You have learned that hope is a dangerous indulgence. It burns bright and fast and leaves your chest hollow when it goes out. Instead, you work, you carry the sap, you return to the scale, you feel the whip once more, not for disobedience, but for being too slow, too tired, too human. And when you lie on the ground after, dust in your teeth, lashes burning down your back, you wonder if the man in the suit across the sea can feel it too. You wonder if the photograph made him pause, if he looked into your eyes through the lens and remembered them when he put down his pen. You wonder if awareness weighs anything at all, if truth, by itself, can tip the scale, or if all it does is delay the inevitable, because delay is all it is so far. No one has come to stop the rubber, no one has stopped the pain. They've only described it more accurately. That is something, but it is not enough. You always thought this was a colony, a place ruled by some faraway crown, part of an empire too vast and cold to understand. That was bad enough. But now, you learn the truth, and somehow it feels worse. This isn't a colony, it's a possession. Not of a nation, but of a man. This entire land, your village, your body, your breath, belongs to King Leopold, personally. Like a coat, or a cane, or a dog that sits when commanded. You hear it from one of the younger missionaries, who speaks more than he should. He says it like it's a marvel, as if ownership on this scale is an achievement. He convinced the world it was a great experiment, the young man mutters, half impressed, half confused. No other king ever pulled off something like this. You don't respond. You stare at your hands, blistered, cracked, stained black with sap, and wonder what it takes to make a whole country vanish into someone's pocket. Leopold didn't conquer the Congo with armies. He conquered it with words. He told the world he was bringing light to the dark continent. He invented a humanitarian mission, so noble, so carefully wrapped in Christian language, that even the skeptics hesitated to speak against it. He said he was building schools, teaching commerce, ending slavery. He held meetings with bishops and scholars and promised moral uplift. All the while, he was cutting deals with businessmen and carving rivers into shipping lanes. He called it the Congo Free State. Free, as if the word alone could rewrite reality, as if putting it on a flag made it true. He signed treaties with village chiefs who couldn't read, and when that wasn't enough, he forged signatures. He drew borders on maps the people here had never seen. He printed pamphlets in polished French and distributed them in London, Brussels, Paris. Every lie bound in gilt and ribbon. In Europe, the story worked. They applauded him. He was a philanthropist, a visionary, a man ahead of his time. He funded museums filled with stolen artifacts. He built gardens with blood-soaked money. He hosted royal banquets where men toasted to his generosity while wearing boots polished with Congo rubber. When critics whispered, he paid writers to call them jealous. When witnesses testified, he discredited them. He owned not just the land, but the narrative. Your blood became his charity. Your labour was rebranded as opportunity. Your silence was sold as proof of success. Each time you knelt in the dirt to scrape sap from a vine, it became part of a story told thousands of miles away, a story in which you were being helped, lifted, redeemed. They say he donated money to hospitals, to churches, that he built monuments and libraries, that he gave speeches about duty and progress. You wonder if he ever gave a thought to the men like you, who died unnamed in the forest, if he even knew how many of you there were, if he cared, or if you were just a line in a ledger, a number that helped balance a budget and polish a reputation. The system he built was elegant in its cruelty. The soldiers were local, so the guilt could be deflected. The labourers were unpaid, so the profits were clean. The press was managed, so the truth arrived too slowly to matter. And all of it rested on one central lie, that what was happening here was good. Sometimes you meet men who still believe it. Overseers who say the beatings are unfortunate, but necessary. Priests who say suffering refines the soul. Agents who look at a burned village and say, at least now it will be rebuilt properly. They speak as if the violence is incidental, a regrettable side effect of progress. But you know better. The violence is not an accident. It is the foundation. The truth comes out in fragments. A letter passed between missionaries. A newspaper clipping smuggled into the post. A photograph printed in Europe and smuggled back, grainy and creased, showing your people with blank eyes and ruined hands. You hold it in your fingers and wonder if this will be enough, if truth at last can kill a lie this large. You doubt it, because lies like this are not just told, they are lived, worn like uniforms, sung in hymns, etched into marble. The Free State is not just a place, it is an illusion, one that swallowed the truth so completely that most of the world still doesn't know they're staring at bones. And yet, you remain. You work, you suffer, you endure, not because the lie has convinced you, but because survival requires obedience. You speak less, you hope less, but you remember. That, at least, is still yours. You remember what was taken, and who took it. You dream of rebellion, not often, not loudly, but some nights when the guards are asleep and the air grows still enough to think, your mind drifts to the shape of it. A rifle stolen, a post set aflame, a whip turned backward in a soldier's hand. You dream of your wife no longer afraid, your children no longer silent. You dream of shouting again, not in pain but in defiance. And then you wake. The trees haven't changed, the camp is still there, the guards are sharpening knives. Someone is coughing blood into the dirt. The chicotte hangs from a nail like a shadow that never leaves. You rise with the others, walk with the others, and begin the day's collection like yesterday never ended. Rebellion, you remind yourself, is a thought. Survival is a practice. You've heard stories. They always travel in fragments, too quiet to attract attention, but too sharp to ignore. A village 3 days west refused the rubber tax. The soldiers came, but the men had hidden rifles, buried for years under a dry tree root. 2 officers died, the rest fled. For a time, then came more soldiers, many more. The village is ash now, nothing left but the rumour. Another story. A group of porters ran during a river crossing, slipped into the trees, disappeared. Months later, one of them was caught trading rubber for food in another region. His hands were gone. No one knows if they were taken before or after he was captured. Either way, he didn't last long. The soldiers made sure his body was displayed, to remind everyone what escape really meant. There are uprisings sometimes, small ones. One of the Force Publique battalions turned on their officers years ago. Mutiny, they called it. For a moment, the name was said with pride. Then came the retaliation, not just against the soldiers, but their families. Children beaten in front of their mothers. Entire villages punished for what one group had done. The soldiers were captured, executed, and left at a crossroads with signs nailed to their chests. One read traitor, another just said example. You think about these things while climbing trees slick with rain, while cutting sap from bark that no longer gives easily. You think about fire and knives and justice, and then you think about your daughter's silence, your wife's thinning arms, the way your son winces when he hears footsteps at night, and you realise that resistance is not only dangerous, it is selfish. If you fight, they suffer. So you stay quiet, you endure, you become efficient, you keep your head low, your hands moving, your questions buried. You are praised occasionally for your work. Not with kindness, but with the absence of punishment. That is the new reward. Nothing, no lash, no loss, just another day. There is no glory in resistance here. No speeches, no banners, no victories, only consequences. If a man speaks too boldly, he disappears. If a woman refuses to kneel, she is made an example. Even small acts, looking the wrong way, hesitating before obeying, are interpreted as threats. The system is fragile, and like anything fragile, it responds with violence to even the faintest pressure. Some do resist in their own ways. A worker hides a knife and dulls it before handing it back. A boy adds water to the sap to cheat the scale. A woman gives a soldier spoiled food, then prays he doesn't notice. These are not revolutions, they are acts of delay, of spite, of survival with a cracked edge. Sometimes they work, sometimes they cost everything. You think sometimes that memory is its own rebellion, that to survive and still remember the old songs, the old names, the old gods, that this is a kind of resistance they cannot touch. But even memory fades under hunger and repetition. What you once recalled in colour is now blurred. Faces dim, voices go quiet. Even the names of your ancestors feel thinner on your tongue. You've forgotten how to speak without watching your surroundings. You've forgotten how to walk without counting your steps. You've forgotten what it was like to live without calculation, without always asking, will this be the moment they decide to hurt me? Still, something inside you resists. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, it just refuses to vanish completely. Some part of you continues to imagine an ending that doesn't include this forest, this post, this endless bleeding. You don't say it aloud. You don't share it, but you keep it. quietly, in the same place you used to keep your name, because resistance here is not a song, it is a whisper, and whispering is dangerous, it costs everything, but you whisper anyway, even if no one hears. It doesn't happen all at once, it's not a collapse you feel, more like a slow unravelling, one thread at a time. First it's your legs, they don't move as quickly as they used to. The pain you used to grit your teeth through now lingers longer. A stumble that might have meant nothing a year ago now sends you to your knees. You get up slower each day. You tell yourself you're tired, just tired. You've been tired for years. Then your hands begin to refuse you. The fingers don't grip the way they should. You drop your knife more often. You press too hard and split the skin across your palm. The sap seeps into the cracks and hardens there. At night, you try to peel it away and find layers of yourself stuck in it. You wrap them in rags that are never quite clean, knowing they won't heal, but you don't stop. You still wake, still walk, still collect. You know what happens to those who rest? You begin to forget things you thought you'd always remember. The name of the river that runs past your old village. The sound your brother's laugh used to make when he was drunk on palm wine. The song your mother used to hum while pounding grain. It's not that you try to forget. It's that the present takes up too much space. The ache, the weight, the vigilance. They leave no room for memory. You speak less. Not just to others, but to yourself. The voice inside you used to say things. Just one more tree. Just one more basket. You can make it. Now it says nothing. There is only action. You wake when you're told. You move when you're ordered. You sleep when you can. You dream rarely. And when you do, it is not of freedom or family, but of rubber vines winding around your chest like ropes. Others notice. One worker offers you water when you sway at the scale. A woman shares her last boiled roots when you're too slow to reach the line. You thank them with your eyes because your mouth can't seem to form the words anymore. They know. Everyone knows. You are nearing the edge. You begin to lose time. You arrive in places without remembering the walk. You find rubber in your basket without recalling the trees you bled it from. Your name, already taken from you once, begins to slip again. You hear it called and feel only a vague pull, like something half familiar from a previous life. You follow the pull. That's enough. And then one morning, deep in the trees, you fall. It's not dramatic, no cry, no stumble, just a quiet sinking. Your knees bend and you don't stop them. The earth is damp beneath you, soft with moss. Your hands fall to the ground, fingers still coated in sap, and you don't try to wipe them clean. The forest hums above, birds, insects, wind in the canopy. The sound is constant but distant, like it's happening in a world just beside yours. You lie there, not asleep, not dead, somewhere in between. Your breath still comes, though shallower than before. You hear footsteps nearby, someone passing with a basket. They don't stop. They don't call for help. They know better. They know what this is. No one drags you back to camp. No one lashes you for idleness. You are not resisting. You are not protesting. You are simply spent, used up. Like a knife too worn to sharpen, a basket too torn to patch. You are no longer useful. And in this place, that is the same as being invisible. And it is strangely peaceful. You think, perhaps, this is what freedom feels like. Not victory, not justice, just the absence of motion, the release of weight. The world continues without you. The quotas remain. The rubber flows. But your part is done. You gave everything you had to a system that never knew your name. In your final hours, you see your mother's face. Not clearly, not like a memory, more like an echo of warmth. You see your village before the uniforms came, the firelight flickering against the walls, the smell of roasted yam, the sound of someone laughing far off. These things were real once, and now they are not. But for a moment, they are yours again. You don't know if anyone will bury you, most likely not. Perhaps you'll be found, perhaps not. Perhaps the vines will reclaim you, curl around your limbs, hide you beneath their green silence. That too would be fine. At least they take without pretending it's mercy. Your body gave rubber. Your silence gave peace. Your labour gave wealth. You were part of something larger, so they said. But in the end, you are alone. Not just in death, but in fading. You are not remembered. Not truly, but you are here. And for a moment longer, you still are. They say Leopold relinquished control, that the Congo Free State, once his private possession, passed into the hands of Belgium. That administration replaced exploitation. That reform replaced horror. That things changed. But no one came for the ones who had already disappeared. No one returned for the bodies left in the jungle. The names erased from a record. The stories that died before they were told. No ships arrived to collect the scattered bones. No priest lit a candle for the unmarked graves. What was broken remained broken. What was lost stayed gone. There was no funeral, not for you, not for the millions like you. Death came in silence, as life had, no announcement, no mourning, just a slow quieting until there was nothing left to take. One day the vines swallowed what remained, and the boots marched on without looking down. Your name was never written, not your real one. Perhaps a Christian name appeared somewhere, a line in a ledger beside a weight or a date. But the name given to you by your mother, whispered over your first sleep, has vanished into the dirt. No stone bears it, no child repeats it. In the records of empire, you were a number, a yield, a cautionary tale, never a person. The land remains, but it is not yours. It was mapped by strangers, claimed in languages you never spoke. The river still runs, the trees still bleed, but no one plants cassava here now. No one sings beside the fire. The village is gone. The world has moved on. They say the worst ended with Leopold, that the lash gave way to law, that things grew gentler under the crown, but the roads built with bleeding hands still carry goods to the ports. The rubber still flows. The profits still rise. Belgium gained a colony, and the men who counted corpses now count exports. The flag changed, but the system remained. Your suffering multiplied by millions left a wound too large to fully heal. Even those who turned away at first were forced, in time, to look. The photographs spread. The reports reached Parliament floors. Casement's words were read into record. Morel's protests gathered weight. People in Europe began to speak of atrocities carefully, distantly, but aloud. But they spoke in numbers, 10 million. They debated thresholds of brutality. They argued about morality and policy and optics. They did not say your name. They could not. It was already gone. Statues still stood in Brussels. Leopold's likeness cast in bronze, one hand stretched outward as if in benevolence. They called him a builder of nations. They filled museums with the wealth extracted from silence. Some protested. A few called for justice, but justice in the imperial tongue is always delayed and rarely delivered. You became a symbol in time, not a man, not a mother, or a child, or a village lost to smoke. A symbol of cruelty, a warning from history, a lesson for classrooms. You live now, in the margins of textbooks, and the black and white blur of a photograph no one looks at too long. But you were real, and your pain was not symbolic. It was daily, bodily, absolute. You do not speak anymore, but the forest remembers. The roads you walked still carry echoes. The towns that grew fat on your labour cannot fully forget the price of their foundation. You are gone, but not erased, not completely. The rubber built the empire, but it also left stains that no monument can clean. You are the scar beneath the marble, and in that you endure. That brings us to the end of tonight's story, not one of kings or conquest, but of blistered hands, vanished names, and a silence so deep it swallowed a nation. If you're still awake, thank you for bearing witness, for remembering the millions who laboured, bled, and disappeared beneath the weight of someone else's empire. If you'd like early access to more stories like this, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, the Patreon link is in the description. You can also like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other history topics you'd like to see covered. And if you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. Sleep well.